Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Talent Community Podcast. I am your host today, Yasar Ahmad, Community Manager at the Talent Community and Global Vice President at HelloFresh. The Talent Community is the go-to space for over 14,000 leaders, HR innovators, and talent strategists who want to stay ahead of the curve. You can join for free by going to www.thetalentcommunity.net. Now, let me ask you this. Why is it that recruitment, we often focus on what's measurable rather than what's meaningful? Or why we assume that the best talent is found by ticking boxes instead of asking better questions? It's these kind of paradoxes that keep us curious. And that's exactly why I'm thrilled about today's guest. Joining me is someone who's not just navigated the recruitment maze, he's practically redesigned it. Roopesh Panchasra has led global talent acquisition teams at giants like ServiceNow, Uber, SAP, and Workday. If recruiting were an Olympic sport, this man would have multiple medals by now. His work spans executive hiring, building Bionic teams, and reshaping how companies approach talent on a global scale. But what I admire most about Roopesh isn't just the scale of his work. It's his belief that recruitment isn't just about filling roles. It's about storytelling, relationships, and strategic curiosity. And frankly, in a world obsessed with algorithms and automation, that human touch is both refreshing and essential. So today, we're diving into big questions. How do you find leaders who don't just fit, but transform organizations? What are we getting wrong about recruitment? And what does the future of talent acquisition look like in a world where AI might know more about us than we do? So without further ado, please welcome Roopesh. Welcome.
Yeah, good to see you. It's been a while. Pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the invite. Quite some introduction.
Well, it's quite some profile you got there, so you do deserve it. I want to jump straight into it. I know we haven't spoken for a while, and we'll catch up as well. There's a saying I love: we don't hire resumes, we hire stories. And in executive recruitment, you're often presented with these perfectly polished profiles. The challenge is obviously uncovering what's behind the resume. So question, when hiring top leaders, how do you get past the surface and identify the real person? Are there specific questions or techniques you use to spot leaders who don't just fit the role, but actually transform the organization?
That's a very good question. And there's no two people that do it the same way and they can be equally good at their job, which is why I suppose this is unique to me, that other people may sort of handle this differently. Why it's difficult, especially at the most senior levels, is, generally, if you're speaking to an accomplished leader at a company that is recognized and you admire, and they've done gloriously well there and been very successful. And especially if that's your bar that you're selling to your company, then generally speaking, they have the polish. They're well versed in storytelling, especially if they're customer facing, telling stories and selling the proposition and selling themselves. It's something they're very, very used to. And it's so easy to get blinded by that because they're in work mode and this is what they do every day. And I think you need to make sure, number one, you plan and you know the person that you're speaking to and you know the background, but also make sure that it is very much two-way. Many people get into these conversations and they're just listening, and it's quite easy to go through a conversation where the candidate is, they know what they need to convey, they know the highlights of their career, and they want to make sure they get that across. But are you making an assessment? So I ask questions like, if I were to speak to their past team, for example, what would their past team say about their greatest strengths or maybe some of their challenges? And this shows self-awareness. Depending on the answers that you get, it's really telling. It tells you so much more about the individual. Also, leading through change. And leading through change is quite common to be asked, but then what did they do? What did they not do? And this shows, a bit more about adaptability. And lastly, we talk about culture and fit, and that's such a difficult thing to assess for, because not a company culture. You're going to have teams within a company that have a completely different culture. And so I sort of like finding out more about them. If not in this industry, where would they be? What would they do? What's going to inspire them? And I think this tells you a lot about their passion, their motivations, and who they are. And again, everything I've said sort of is not necessarily something that's on their LinkedIn profile. So, some of the things that I would use.
It's really interesting. Everything you said there is really interesting. And what I like the most is a lot of these leaders are polished, and they know how to act in a certain way. And then when I say act, I say that intentionally, because it's almost like it's their theater, right? They know they've got to put their A game on. And I know personally, sometimes I'm quite introverted outside of work, right? And, I've got my very small group of friends. I spend time a lot at home. I don't like to kind of interact. I'm not the first person to go make a conversation outside of work. But if you saw my LinkedIn, or you saw me at work or out on stage, you would just assume, oh, this guy likes to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost like that. The interview becomes their theater, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to play it.
And you can switch it on, right? Your job, needs someone like that. I mean, you can morph to the environment that you're in, and that's what you're saying. If you're a leader and you're well accustomed to knowing when to turn the switch on, what better time to have that switch on when you're at interview stage and you're trying to impress? I mean, they can, they're adaptable enough to be able to do that. I totally get what you're saying.
It's a benefit if the person, it's a skill in itself, right? And if someone has that, great. Does it give you the perfect answer when it comes to finding out about them as individuals and their traits and their culture? It can be very difficult. Moving on, I have a lot of recruiters will be watching this, and when I think of executive recruitment, I think of you, right? There's no one out there that I know who's got more experience in executive recruitment, and I think I'd be shunned if I didn't ask this question. What makes the perfect executive recruiter?
What a great question. I will answer the question, but I want to caveat that with, we don't want a team full of clones where you look the same, you ask the same questions, and you get the same answers, because, how boring would that be? And diversity of thought, and just leads to a better environment. So people do it differently. But if you're asking me, when I've been in environments where I'm building the teams and the kind of qualities I would look for, I know exactly the skills. I know what I'm looking for. Number one is the personal brand. And my team, if any of my team is listening to this, I will bore them with this topic for as long as they will listen. Because personal brand is just incredibly important at any level, any role. But I think for exec recruiting, so important. And what I mean by that is, what do you want to be known for? How do you want to turn up? And I ask my team, after you've had a meeting, whether with a candidate or whether with a senior leader, if I were to call that individual after that meeting, what would you want them to say? Now, in our work environment, so there's so many things that we don't have control over. We just don't, have control over. We have total control over what people think of us, because it's how we turn up. And let me give you a very simple example. If I were to speak to someone after a meeting that one of my team had been to, they can say, yeah, really good meeting. They asked lots of good questions. They were very polite. They'd made lots of notes. They were organized. And I feel pretty good about, what the outcome will be. Nothing wrong with that feedback. But that feedback could easily be, wow, they were 10 minutes early. They turned up with 2 org charts, my current org chart and my future org chart. They knew the companies that I'd hired from. They knew my gender balance. They knew 2 people had left. They knew 1 person was on a performance plan. And they stood up and did a whiteboard on the recruiting strategy. Now, 2 pieces of feedback there. One took, 15 minutes, 30 minutes of preparation. And the other was just the bright person that turned up that does this every day. That can happen easily. And that kind of feedback is totally down to you. And I think that's really important, especially at the most senior levels. You want to come away from that meeting where they're totally blown away and, you've delivered something they absolutely didn't expect. The second piece of three is you're the expert. You have to turn up to that meeting and not be subservient. Because in the absence of you having a plan, you'll be given a plan. Because even those that are not in recruitment are experts in recruitment. And unless you turn up with a plan. So don't be subservient. It doesn't matter what it says on their business card or the level that they're at. With all due respect to them, they're the experts in their field, and you need to turn up like you're the expert in search. So many people make that mistake, and the overly used term of order taker, it's done very easily. Like, what do you need? Where would they be? What must they have done? I'll go find them. Unless you're going to be involved in that sort of crafting, that mosaic of the person, then again, it could be someone that's just impossible to find. And then lastly, you have to be impartial. You cannot seem like you're pushing candidates. And what I mean by that is, whenever we are talking about an individual, a candidate, maybe to our hiring manager, we want to be able to go in and say, here's why I'm presenting them. There's things that I really love about this individual, but here's things that I'm unsure about. Here's things that we need to probe further. Here's things that I think could be derailers. And so let's uncover whether this is the right person, as opposed to, as a hiring manager myself, when I feel my recruiter is overselling somebody. We work internally. It's done very differently, and it's in my interest and your interest to make sure we find the best people. And that's a bit of a shift that you have to take in how you deliver. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. I think there's a lot of points that you made, and one of my favorite parts of your answer is the kind of objection handling part. I think this is something that people learn on the job, and it's not rarely taught. But there are actually hacks to that. And I was recently telling my team this about how to use the growth mindset way of saying no. Most of us just say, no, that's not possible, or no, I can't do that. But if you reframe it and you say, look, I like A and I like B, what if we focus on C? What you're doing is moving away from rejection to reprioritization. And I think a lot of stakeholders would appreciate that type of engagement, as opposed to you saying to them no, and then there's an ego battle between the two. And I think that's quite important. I remember I was reading your profile and something stood out to me, and it sounded wonderfully futuristic. You probably know what I'm talking about here. You've talked about bionic teams. I
love that word. I love that word. I use it all the time.
I'm going to start using it as well after this. After I get the answer, hopefully. So, what does a bionic team look like in practice? Is it just about blending tech with talent, or is it more to the concept? And how do you do that? What is that?
Yeah, no, it's good. I love the word bionic, because for those that maybe are listening, I'm not sure how old you are, Yasser. You look annoyingly young. I watched something called The Bionic Man when I was young, a chap called Steve Austin, and he had these superpowers, and I remember that, and that was he did good. He was a good person that helped people and got rid of bad, and he was bionic. And this whole concept of having these superpowers and being the best you can be, and I think just that concept and that word can people interpret it in different ways, but the way I would sort of describe it is a bionic team is a team of people that combine intellect and know-how, creativity with innovation, and sometimes at different degrees, right? Yeah, someone that wants to, I don't know, we've all got these people in our team, but they want to break records. They want to be an influencer. They're early adopters, and we haven't rolled out a program to learn this new AI skill, and they've already read about it. And learning to learn is really difficult, especially when we went to school in university years and years ago. And could you survive not ever learning anything? Potentially, even though in our industry now, that's going to dramatically change in years to come. But yeah, just that person that taught themselves how to learn. And like, if you can create an environment that fosters a bit of experimentation, where they're using the intuition, you're allowing, giving space to do that. Combining that with a data orientated approach that every team really has to have at their core, then there's joy that you can share across the team. And when you share some of these best practices, contagious. Everyone wants to be this bionic version of themselves. And it's like golf, right? You can never master it, but you're always sort of aspiring to be better. And that's what I mean. People that are not complacent, they're not content, they always want to strive for more, irrespective of how well they're doing. And I'm sure you've got stories, and there's a direct correlation between the people that over the years that have worked for my teams, or I've worked for, or I've worked alongside, those that have really, reached incredible levels, enjoy their job more than anybody else, are those people. Are those people that have that level of inquisitiveness that you just cannot teach.
I think it's Confucius who said a man has two lives. The second life starts when he realizes he only has one.
Yeah.
And I remember I heard that quote and I was like, you know what? If I've only got one life, why don't I just try be the best at everything I want to do? Or at least not try to be the best, make the most amount of effort. And it's not tiring. For someone like myself, I call myself an insecure high achiever, right? So constantly trying to outwit that massively, because I can
You've
use
got it.
I've got it.
You've got it. I will charge you every time I hear you using it, but you absolutely have it. You can borrow it.
Oh, that's amazing. I will reference you every time.
Yeah. Okay, you have it.
I'll do the Harvard referencing, back in the university days. So we talked a lot about the future in your answer as well, and I think it's inevitable. I'm going to ask you about AI. And we live in a world where AI can screen candidates, and there's other tools out there. It's kind of unsettling about how quickly it can develop, right? So instead of asking you about that, what I would love to ask you is, what would a dream setup look like for you with AI in mind?
In terms of sort of the team environment, how would it work?
Yeah, so if you could wave a wand, then AI is coming. So there's certain elements that you enjoy in the human element, and then you got the kind of the AI element. What would be your perfect mix in the future in your in your experience? Because you can't. Well, you probably could replace everything with AI, but that's not the perfect experience.
Yeah, no, it certainly isn't. And I don't think that day will ever come, even though there's lots of noise around, could the role of the recruiter become obsolete? And I've said this on previous discussion, and it was, there was quite a few comments around it, but the intention was that I do feel the role of the recruiter would become obsolete in its current form. And even now, when I'm interviewing people for the team, there's an expectation that people will understand some of the technologies out there, some of the efficiencies that can be gained, and the improvements in our process, regardless of whether they've actively used them, because there's many companies at different stages of this. So it has to be a combination, right, of your strategy, what you want to do, the personalization piece, like how do we make this unique instead of monotonous and repetitive? But there's the efficiency piece there, and that's where the AI piece comes in. We need to create efficiencies in our process, consistency in our process, while trying to personalize them. And that's the dichotomy between it being completely automated and it having the human touch. And I think, that can handle efficiency and data processing and, trends, but it can't take over relationship building, right? And decision making and assessing for fit and that whole human touch. And I think that there's that balance that, hey, look, none of us have worked out yet, but we do understand that when we're having discussions about adoption, the conversation doesn't start with how many people could we, displace. It never starts that way. So it starts with how can we create efficiencies? How can we create consistency whilst maintaining personalization? I think that's really the balance that we're all looking for.
Yeah, I'm lost for words because everything you're saying is like, yes, yes, yes. I'm just nodding my head like one of those bobbleheads.
Doing it is so much more difficult than saying it. But I in my mind, surely, yeah.
There's some scary stuff out there. I've been exploring AI to the end.
Yeah.
Depth. Even now, as we speak, I'm using a plugin for my emails. So while I receive an email, if we're talking, it drafts the email, looks at my calendar, does all of that stuff, which is great. And I'd say it's about 80% there in terms of tone. I probably 70% of the scripted drafts.
Really? Yeah. Wow.
And then the rest of the 30% are emails I don't need to reply to. So it's not actually that I don't use them. It's just I just delete them because I'm like, I'm not going to reply to that.
But the drafting would still be done. You would have a draft, and then obviously it's up to you to send if you want to.
And it gives you two options, right? So Fixer should probably pay me if they're listening. You should pay me because I've been advertising this. But it's a tool called Fixer, FYXER.ai. Okay. Recommend everybody trying it for a week. It connects with Google, connects with Outlook, and honestly, probably saves me hours.
Mine.
And it's scary because you then, like in my rabbit hole going down the AI route, I looked at 11 Labs. If you type in 11 Labs, it will come up on Google and you can click on it and it will take you to like an AI call assistant. So you can click call and you can start speaking to this person. And honestly, it's like instantaneous conversation flowing naturally. None of the bionic sounding, not bionic, sorry, I'm using it wrong now. None of the robotic sounding voices, but it's, unless it's only the beginning. I wonder whether in the future, like already now, I can replicate my voice. And so if I was to replicate my voice, put it on top of an AI, and then have that as a mobile number that you can call and then ask random questions to.
This might not even be the real you. Yeah, so is that what you're saying?
Who knows? No, I'm joking. I think, but it's definitely an interesting one. Actually, leading on from that, there's a question I have for you about hiring bias. Because obviously AI is coming into the mix, but specifically in executive recruitment, there is a tendency to hire what's, leaders want to work with people who've been there, done that in some instances. So there's a lot of tend to hire people who look like what's worked before, but then they also want innovation. How do you kind of challenge leaders who gravitate towards familiarity as opposed to the core skills? You must have come across that a lot.
Every day, every single day. Well, there's a few things there. If we start by sort of saying it's not unreasonable for them to expect that. If you're a senior leader and you've been in the industry for decades and you've been hiring the same way throughout all of these amazing companies that you've been at, and you've been wildly successful by doing it that way, why would you think about doing things differently? And I think you going in with the mentality that it's not unreasonable for someone at company X to say, I'm only interested in speaking with people from company Y and Z. Happens every day. Clown companies, moss companies, like depending on the environment that you're in, you sort of you make an assumption that if you haven't worked at the companies that we compete with, either now or in the past, then how could you possibly be successful here? That's our job. It's our job to test that hypothesis that you don't have to have worked at those companies to be successful here. And I work at an incredible tech company at the moment, and very often with most searches, they pick a handful of usual suspects to say, here's the companies we need to go after. Now, we should absolutely go after those companies, but how are we going to test the hypothesis that you don't have to have worked there to be successful? Because I can tell you, I know incredible leaders that have never worked at the companies we compete with that I think would do extremely well at the company I'm at. But at the time of a search, especially, I suppose, the more senior searches, because the gravity of not having someone in seat is very apparent. At the time of a search, it's almost too late to test the hypothesis. To say, I know you said you wanted people from enterprise software, but here's someone from financial services or FMCG. It's too late to test it. So you need to build enough of a relationship and enough trust with those individuals, with those leaders, to find time to test that. And that has to happen way before there's a search. And you have to be able to work with that leader to say, I understand it goes back to your personal brand. I understand your business. I understand the skill set. I understand what good looks like. I know the people that have been most successful in your org. Here's organizations that have, I don't know, the same tech stack, the same customer base. They work with the same partners. So there's correlation. It's not completely new, but they don't come from maybe the environments that they're used to hiring from. Strategic introduction, test the hypothesis. And, if you do that well, inevitably, they'll come out. It won't happen every time, but they will come out going, wow, I would never have met that person at the time of me having an open position. And that piece is up to us. And I think the skills-based hiring is we could spend the whole section talking about skills-based, but then there's, do I have to have done the job to get the job? We've always searched. It's always about, if I'm looking for a SVP of engineering is not a good example. If I'm looking for a SVP of marketing, maybe, guess what? I'm going to go out and find people that have been SVPs of marketing.
Yeah.
But what
CMOs even.
What? Sorry?
CMOs even.
Right, exactly. You go and find people that are doing the job or have done the job, because that's what you've been asked to go find. But what if there was a way to assess what are the skills, competencies, drivers that are common in successful CMOs, and then be able to come up with an environment where here's someone from, I don't know, consulting or from corporate development or from our M&A team or from HR that have a 60 or 70% overlap of the skills that are needed. There will be a time where we'll be considering people that haven't done the job to do the job far more often because of the skills match. We're not there yet, but there will be a time where I want to get a call from someone in my company when I'm not looking for work to talk to me about an internal move that I would never have otherwise considered. That's where this will evolve.
Yeah. I don't want to really talk about HelloFresh here, but we do have something called Talent Pantry, which is exactly this. Before that, there was a point you made around skills. Interestingly, in many, the Berlin startup world, and probably in the the rocket internet type companies, there is a kind of a skill set that they look for, but it's not necessarily been there, done that. It's a management consultant skill set. We need a leader. Let's get them from a McKinsey, BCG, or somewhere equivalent, because we know that they can sell. We know that they're scrappy. We know they'll be hungry. So the skills they're looking for are not necessarily directly linked to the role. It's more of the attitude the charisma, the persistence, the business acumen, the drive, etc., etc. And they've been successful in some of those key roles. But it gets to a point where, at what point do you need some maturity, and it suffers, the company suffers because they don't have someone who's been there, done it. For example, if you're trying to set up a new warehouse automation system in some consumer goods company and you hire a consultant, yeah, cool. But it might be better to hire someone who's worked in Amazon, dealt with all the,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes people obsess about the skill set, and then it can go in a totally different tangent, right? It can go into this whole other piece. I know we're going to come up to time soon, so I want to ask you squeeze in a couple of more questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What recruitment decision have you made for your team or for yourself that defied the metrics but worked out really well? What did you learn from it?
Oh, that's a good one. I remember hiring someone that, I mean, we've all been there, right? You go through an interview process, you sort of start wanting to hire someone that's sort of done the job, and then all of a sudden something amazing happens. You meet somebody, this is a good example where maybe your recruiter that you trust has suggested, trust me, you need to meet this individual. I love it when that happens because, I love being surprised. I love sort of testing what I initially thought wasn't right to be proven wrong. It's sort of part of what we do. But yeah, I remember speaking to someone that clearly didn't have all of the experiences, but just was so passionate, had so much vision, and had enough, self-awareness to be very open about areas that they absolutely didn't have the experience in, but what they would do to overcome that. Because I'm a true believer in skills can be learned, right? But the leadership qualities are so hard to teach. But we'd identified there were skills that needed bridging, but the leadership traits were just, the best, certainly amongst the others that I'd interviewed for. So, testing for speed and testing for learning to work in ambiguous environments and followership and what you do to nurture and train and grow others and sharing joy in each other's successes, like things like that. You feel those kind of qualities from somebody. It's lovely to be in a situation where you're prepared to hire based on what they might be able to do. I very rarely has that happened to me and my team, but I know the times that it has, and it's great when it does.
Yeah. I don't recall it. I think it was Simon Sinek who's doing a talk on the Navy SEALs, and he talked about how the Navy SEALs would choose someone who they could trust more than someone who's got the competency. Trust would be an outrank everything else. And I always felt that was quite interesting because there is a sense of responsibility, a duty of care, I guess, when you trust someone, and there is that kind of confidence, I've got your back, and especially when you're hiring for your own team. Recruiters hear it all, right? The bizarre, brilliant, the baffling. And I'm wondering, what's the weirdest interview answer you've ever come across? And I know you've got some stories, so let's keep it PG.
Interview question.
Interview answer.
Answer. You know what? I was asked this question. I was actually asked this question. It was a few years ago, but hopefully this will make you chuckle. It was years ago, graduate recruiting, and I remember it distinctly because I could see the person doing it. I asked the person, what I was probably nearing the end of the interview. What additional skills outside of maybe something? I asked something along the line. What additional skills could you bring to the team or the company? Obviously, I was thinking more about work-related skills. And this chap, I know his name. I won't say it. He's probably still doing this now. He said, "I can do the crab." Right? I'm like, "What's the crab?" And he said to me, he goes, my arms are a bit longer than I think they should be. So when I've never seen anyone do it since. You cross your legs, you sit down, crossing his legs, but then he's pulled himself up, just his legs are crossed. He's pulled himself up using that, and then because then I said, "What's the crap?" And he said, "I'll show you." So he's got down, and then he's walking around the floor on his arms. Like, come on.
Oh, that's
Give
crazy.
Give the man the job.
Did you give him the job?
I remember. I don't know. Because I'm blinded by what he had done. I think it was a group. We were interviewing lots of people. I really hope he got the job. I don't know. I don't know.
That is the funniest. That is the funniest answer I've heard. Honestly, that is hilarious.
Yes, the next time you have an interview somewhere that you're looking to leave HelloFresh, if it's not going well, keep that in your back pocket.
Yeah. I'm not sure I could do the crab. Now I'm tempted to go try it out after this interview. I'm going to get my kids here and say, "Hey,
for those listening to this podcast, stop, press pause.
Yeah,
go do the crab."
Yeah, exactly. Go do the crab. We've run out of time. We'll finish up there. A huge thank you, Roopesh, for joining us today. What an incredible discussion. I don't know what else to say. That's it. So thank you again. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Talent Community podcast. If you've enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more in-depth conversations with top industry leaders. Join the discussion by signing up to our Slack community where talent professionals, HR innovators share ideas, challenges, and best practices in real time. And of course, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn for the latest talent trends, insights, and exclusive content from the talent community. Till next time, see you later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn.
I got into Stoicism. One of my SVPs, she was really into it, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and I thought, you know what? I need to detach myself from everything to reattach myself. And then that led me to look into discipline, how to control the mind and everything else. And then I just said to myself, you know what? I'm going to learn about discipline. And so I came across this concept called microdosing on discipline. I was like, sounds interesting. What is that? And essentially you take a task, whatever it may be. So let's say learning a language, Duolingo, right? We've all tried it. I'm doing it right now. So, okay, I'm going to use Duolingo for 100 days. I don't care if I learn anything. I don't care if I enjoy it. I don't care if it's an hour or 5 minutes, but I'm going to do Duolingo every single day, irrespective. And at the end of it, I don't care if I've gained anything or lost anything. The purpose is, can I get to 100 days? That's the only objective.
That's interesting. Because the intention of doing something like that, it's not necessarily that. It's training yourself to do it for the period of time. Regardless of the outcome?
Regardless of the outcome, right? Because the outcome is inherently...
it should be a byproduct if you do it right. But it's a byproduct. That's interesting.
Exactly. And so after 20 days, I was like, okay, let me try doing calorie counting. So I started doing calorie counting. And then I was like, this is easy. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh, I've lost a lot of weight. Oh, well, I'll do it for another 100 days. So now I'm on day 260 or something.
Okay.
20, was it 115? So now 88. So whatever that is.
You were 115.
Yeah, my biggest was 115 at the beginning of, when I actually started calorie counting, I was about 108, 109.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And it was just, it's purely calorie count.
That's it. So you generally, you could eat whatever you want, providing you're counting the calories and staying within whatever limit you've set yourself.
I will tell you now, I did not do a single hour of cardio. I have no loose skin. I have a chocolate bar every single day.
No,
I'm not.
nobody
I'm
has a
not.
chocolate bar every day, loses as much weight as you.
I'm telling you. I just had a Kit Kat, had a Nutri-Grain bar, and then I had Walker's Crisps, and then I had. Fair enough. I had like I make these homemade burgers. They're amazing. Like 5% minced meat, low calorie cheese, ketchup. It's got no calories in it anyway. It's hardly anything. And so something like that, tailored with whatever I want. And so as long as I get, and people obsess over protein, they're like, oh, you need to get double your weight.
I try and stay off the carbs, and then it gets difficult.
No, I don't care about carbs. I'm an Asian person. I'm going to eat carbs. It's inherently in my DNA.
Yeah.
So I say, as long as I hit 90 to 120 grams of protein every day, which is not 180, I'll be fine. And I do go to the gym, but I don't do cardio. I don't do 10,000 steps. I think on average, I'm pretty sure right now, what am I, 956 steps.
You've just been sat in that seat all day. That's why.
Basically, yeah.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, Yasar.
I should be on like 6,000 steps. I know this is shameful behavior, but what I'm trying to say is that I think I just basically, I don't know if it's a loophole, but I just said, okay, I'm going to just focus on this one thing relentlessly.
That is really good. And I know it's not the purpose of this conversation, but you and I need to talk again, and you need to give me like this positive energy and give me the model that you've used, because you've made it sound, it can't be as easy as you've described, but you're certainly making it sound like, if you put your mind to it and discipline, like it's relatively straightforward.
Do you know what? Give me your number after this, and I will send you my food for tomorrow. I'll just take you three pictures.
Why don't you just send me the food instead of just sending me the list?
Yeah. Anyway, we'll start the podcast. So
yeah, let's do that.